You will be asking, is there a way to implement a secure and replicable infrastructure that meet those or these standards? Follow, keep during the call and during the meeting, and I hope answer your question. First, there is this is are these are things common. It's called vintage right now. All these mode of these clothes and shoes and glasses right now are called vintage. Well, the terminal also will become some kind of vintage technology where those old terminal doesn't have the resources right now. With Azure Virtual Desktop we can do that, have compute and system with very low resource and have remotely a host with all the resources that we need. I am Carlos Solís Salazar. I am a member of Community Dojo in Panama, dedicated in training in cybersecurity and cloud computing. And I have a bunch of fundamental certification, associate certification, and expert certification in Microsoft. Also, I have Microsoft certified training and Terraform certification. Also, I have some recognition from Microsoft communities, and recently I received the Microsoft MVP. Why Carlos Solis Salazar? Because if you're looking for Carlos Solis on internet, will appear a guy from a TV show. It's a fictional character. So no, that is not me. Looking for me as Carlos Solis Salazar. So before go to the agenda, I would like to show you a couple of things. First, here is the environment. As you can see, right now I don't have anything deployed in the environment. And let's deploy our Azure Virtual Desktop in Terraform. I promise I will explain in detail each of these commands. Remember, first we apply Terraform init in our environment. We wait a couple of seconds to deploy and to download all the information we require for our Terraform environment. Let's wait for a moment. Okay, now we're going to deploy our environment. Again, let's wait for a few seconds. Okay, damos yes. And now we are going to continue with our presentation. Again, as I said, I promise I will explain in detail what I just did. So our agenda will be separated into part one. We are going to talk about what is Azure Virtual Desktop. We are going to see Azure Virtual Desktop infrastructure, how to secure our Azure Virtual Desktop environment. Also, what is Terraform? That is our second block of information. What is the infrastructure as a code with Terraform? we'll see a little bit of Terraform lifecycle. We already saw a couple of comments. Again, I will explain you in a couple of slides in the future and how Terraform works. And then we are going to explore the Terraform code that we have to create Azure Virtual Desktop. Azure Virtual Desktop is just an excuse to show you and talk to you about Terraform. And then some final thoughts about Azure Virtual Desktop and Terraform. So when we are going to use Terraform, first, what is Terraform? Terraform is, sorry, Azure Virtual Desktop. Azure Virtual Desktop is a desktop environment that runs service on Azure, but I will connect remotely to that environment in order to be able to use those resources in the cloud. When we will use it? We will use it when we require some specific compute instance. We require some secure environment. In my case, as you can hear, I am not from United States. I am located in Panama, but when I need to use from one of my customer, I need to connect to the environment. I connect through Azure Virtual Desktop. It's a computer in their environment with their rules, and I connect in a secure way to their environment. So that is another reason. Other reason, I don't have enough resource in my current computer, and I need some resource to use some specific, I don't know, graphic design computer. I can create a computer just for that reason. One of the components of Azure Virtual Desktop are divided in two blocks. One is the environment that the resource that are managed by Azure. We have the web access, the service within Azure Virtual Desktop to allow the user access to the virtual desktop, remote apps, and everything through HTML5. So if you have a device compatible with HTML5, you can run Azure Virtual Desktop client. You have a gateway. The, gateway allow the remote connection. You have connection broker that will be working as a service bus with the virtual desktop and the remote app. You have a diagnostic component. You have a storage. All these resources are managed by Azure. I don't have to be worried by Azure, and that is the front line of the resource. And we have the resources that are managed by us. We manage the image of the OS that we have. We manage the different virtual machine are called session hosts. We manage the user who will be using the Azure Virtual Desktop and the policy, the security policy around those users. The application, I don't know, I need Word, Excel. Well, I have to install it, keep it updated. And even with from this Azure Virtual Desktop session host, I can connect through VPN to our environment, on-premise environment, and I can use it in a secure way. I can connect to the on-premise environment. There are some important configuration about Azure Virtual Desktop that I would like to tell you. There are a couple ways. One is the balancing of the host pool. I can use two modes. Breadth, breadth mode, where will occupy all the resource. You will occupy the resource distributing the quantity of user. So the first user will connect to the first host, the second as the second, and the third, and the fourth user will connect to the host. Sorry about that. it will connect to the host. So they will be distributing the user through the different hosts. The deep mode will complete occupy the first host, and then we'll go to the second host, and then we'll go to the third host, and go on. There are we can use Azure Virtual Desktop in our browser. As I said before, we only need a device or a service compatible with HTML5, and I can use Azure Virtual Desktop. So I can use Android, iOS, even my smart TV. I can use it for work with Azure Virtual Desktop. In the moment of the authentication, we will be using our Azure, our Entra ID credentials. So we'll apply all the security related to the user. Uh, this is kind of the way of the connection. I have different devices. The first layer of authentication will be through the our Entra ID before was called Azure AD. Um, the first layer I will ask for my, or the system will ask for my credential of Entra ID. Meanwhile, in the moment I authenticate, I will connect to the web access of the service, and then I will connect to a gateway that will be assign me the connection to my host. This gateway will receive the authentication for Azure AD, and then the host will be connected to the broker, and I will connect remotely to my Azure Virtual Desktop. Another interesting configuration about Azure Virtual Desktop, I know I will not open the 22 port or the RDP port. I only will connect through 443 HTTPS, and all the negotiation and the tools will be administered by Microsoft, as we talked before. And I only have to be worried about the OS or the VM. So when do you remember the first layer is connected to the Azure AD? If I apply conditional access to my user, I need Entra ID Premium P1 or Premium P2 to have a conditional access. If I need real-time risk user or real-time risk account, I need Entra ID P2, but I will have a conditional access. So if the user or the system complies or have all the requirement, they will me allow the access to the portal of Entra, to the portal of the Azure Virtual Desktop. So I have this first layer. For example, if I won't, or I don't want allow access from my country borders, or from some specific countries, I can have that control. So even if somebody have my credential and trying to connect from India, they won't be able, because that access, conditional access will block that access at the beginning. Also, another way to protect the endpoint, the session host, is with Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. What important aspect? Azure Virtual Desktop can be used with Windows Server 2022, 2019, 2016, with Windows 10 and Windows 11. In fact, Azure Virtual Desktop is the only resource that has the Windows Enterprise multi-user. So you will have a Windows 11 with multiple user per computer. Usually, when you have a normal Windows 11, Windows 10, only one user can work. Only one session per user you can have at the same time. But in Azure, you can have multiple users in a Windows 11 or Windows 10. So I can apply the Microsoft Defender and protect the device from malware, ransomware, and all other um, threats to the user. Also, I can personalize the computer, the Azure Virtual Desktop machine with Microsoft Intune. Microsoft Intune is the MDM, Mobile Device Management of Microsoft. I can apply policies to the device, apply wallpaper, apply multiple configuration like the configuration when we are on premise and use a Active Directory in domain service. The same configuration we can do it through iTunes. Also, another advantage that we have with Azure Virtual Desktop is the capacity of disaster recovery. We can recover the data from pretty close the moment of the disaster and return and take the environment up again really fast. There are multiple configurations through around the Azure Virtual Desktop, but we can have a disaster recovery environment through those devices. Even when you have a host pool of computers, you can have, I don't know, 20 computers ready to work, but you're only working with five. If those five computers have an issue and they fail, I can turn on or start other five computers at the second, at the minimal time of lost data. So now let's talk about Terraform. But first, let's define what is infrastructure as a code. Infrastructure as a code is the practice of managing and provisioning computer infrastructure like server, networking, database, and multiple more resources through machine uh, files, different configuration files, and also different environment. Sorry, uh, with like programmation code will be seen now. Don't worry. And we can control the version, consistency in the data, because one advantage of infrastructure as a code is that I can be always apply the same code and deploy the same infrastructure. So I can be sure that that configuration will be consistent through the time. So what is infrastructure as a code with Terraform? Well, Terraform is the code control and let us define in a human readable environment. When I start working with Terraform, I remember Bicep for Microsoft didn't exist yet, and read ARM templates is pretty hard, pretty complicated. So appears Terraform and help us read the configuration that we apply in the environment. Uh, Terraform can manage infrastructure from multiple clouds. Um, we can manage infrastructure of multiple clouds, allowing administrate Azure, Google Cloud, AWS, Oracle, even VMware. I can administrate it with Terraform. Also, I can standardize the deployment workflow. See, if I have defined the deployment of uh, any infrastructure, I can be sending that always will be the same infrastructure. I can track my infrastructure. I learned Terraform because I could deploy development environment, QA environment, production environment in the same amount of time with the same configuration. And if somebody tried to modify manually the configuration, any environment, when I run again the Terraform code, the system will tell me here there is a new configuration that you didn't have, so I go back to the same configuration. Um, that is or something that helped me to update the configuration because sometimes they didn't know what they done to fix the any error in the moment, but we needed to know what was. So with Terraform, I can track any change on the infrastructure. You can have multiple collaborators use deploying with Terraform. I have right now, even right now, I am in a project where I can deploy the Terraform environment. I working in a component. I have a coworker working in another component. In that way, we can control and monitoring and advance and progress really fast because it's not just one person deploying an environment. What is the Terraform lifecycle? And you don't you you saw the first command, the command Terraform init. Terraform init initialize the environment, will download all the modules, components, resource that they require to execute it. And there is a Terraform plan. We passed just the execution, the Terraform plan. We went directly to the next command. But Terraform plan will show me all the configuration that I'm going to do in order to be sure if that is the change or that is the implementation that I want to see. Then you apply Terraform apply. That configuration will apply all the configuration you already have in your file and will implement and create the environment. At the end, if you don't want the environment or you finish with your environment, you can apply Terraform destroy and this will be destroy all the resource you create in your deployment. How Terraform works? Well, you have a bunch of Terraform files. Doesn't matter if it's 1, 2, 3, 100 files. Terraform will read all the files in that folder, on all the files with the extension .tf. Usually we split uh, split the Terraform the files in multiple files for good practice, convention names, uh, but also for control in our deployment. So when you execute any of the previous command, the Terraform will read all the files, and then the module Terraform code will create a file called Terraform state. You will see it as a terraform.tf state that will have the state of the environment the moment we deploy it. Do you remember when I told you somebody make a change in the infrastructure will be different that the I already have in the Terraform state, so I can see that incongruency. And Terraform code will apply in the different providers that Microsoft have. Sorry, the Terraform have. It can be AWS, DigitalOcean, Google Cloud, Azure. Anyway, there are a lot of providers that you can apply. Even with this Terraform file, you can deploy in multiple environments and multiple clouds with the same bunch of instruction because in your deployment you need something in AWS and then something in Azure. You can make that deployment that way. So just enough talking. Let's go let's review the Terraform code. So let me show you what I execute. As you can see, we let me show you where we start when we start. The Terraform apply, the system start reading the information that they need from the environment, and then the this is the Terraform plan will tell me what they are creating, all the resources that they are creating, all the resources that we need for Azure Virtual Desktop. We will see all the details in a few minutes. And then it's deploying, and deploy and create 20 resources. And while we were talking, the Terraform create 20 resources. So let's first let's explore what we create. So this is the moment when before we execute Terraform, in the moment I refresh, I create a multiple resource that I need to work with my environment, Azure Virtual Desktop environment. So I have all the resource that I need, and with one virtual machine, I can create multiple virtual machine. But for demo purpose, I just create one VM. Well, how is the components, or what are the components? This is my deployment folder. Deployment folder is the folder that I have locally for the Terraform, for the deployment of Terraform. I need this block. Always I need the block Terraform backend where I going to storage my TF, my Terraform TF state file. This is for knowledge our purpose. I create a module which that module will deploy all the Terraform information that all the Terraform resource that I require. One thing that that module asks me is for the users of those that group that I'm going to create. I create a resource group called RGABD, a prefix AC from the Azure Back to the School 2024, and the name of the security group where all these users will be added. The tenant, subscription, and the registration key, I have to give them a day. Should not be more than a month. I put until the 13th of June, sorry, September 30th. So here I am. Well, so I have this model, but this model doesn't tell me anything. Let's see the deployment, the complete file deployment. Do you remember the convention name? I'm going for the first file. The main file with this block create a resource group. Always is the same block to create a resource group in Azure. In our scenario, we need multiple resources. So the first group of resources that we require is the Azure Virtual Desktop component. I create the Azure Virtual Desktop workspace. Here, this is a variable, the prefix that we load in the other file. So always I can have a different prefix, and I don't have to be modifying file by file or deployment by deployment. I only change a variable. These are different, the host pool configuration, and that token that I require here is the expiration date that I already defined when they will work. Another interesting configuration that you can see before that, as you can see, all the block look like the same, have the same structure, resource. We're looking for a different a module from Terraform. This is the name that I put to the module and the different attributes that I require for the resource. All of them have kind of the same structure, and this is a component that's called dependence on, that say that this says to Terraform that I cannot deploy this resource until this resource is completely deployed. So I have my Azure Virtual Desktop environment created. Other component that I need is the networking. Here I create the virtual network, and create the subnet. Also, I need to create a network security group with a specific rule to work with a Terraform. I already created, and then I associate that network security group with the subnet. With the network, I need to create other things are the session host. The session host is are the computers. The session host, here I import the value of the token. Um, Here I create the network interface of our computer. As you can see, the name is created without a structure of different variables. Also the nick, uh, we assign a dynamic IP and associate to the subnet of the virtual network we already create. We create a virtual machine. We associate the virtual network, the network interface that we already create. We assign local user name and password. We create an identity. Also, we create the corresponding disk, and we set which image of virtual machine I'm going to use. In this case, Windows 11 with this SKU. Here is the tricky part. I have to execute some extension to allow that Azure Virtual Desktop know the virtual machine that I create, because the creation of the virtual machine is a normal process of creation virtual machine. So with this module, with this block, I will create the integration through Azure Virtual Desktop and the computer. In my case, I don't have a domain controller, so this value I set false, and I'm going to use the Enter ID credential. So this option I set true. If you see the Microsoft documentation, here will be true and this one will be false, because I will be using a domain controller. In my environment, test environment, I don't have a domain controller. And then I will give to the virtual machine the capacity to authenticate with the Enter ID credential. This this module just tell to the computer you will use as a domain controller, you will use the Entra ID. That is all the information. There are other structure as a version of the different providers that I'm going to use. Will use two providers. One is Azure RM, that is the provider for Azure Resource, and Azure AD, that is the provider from Entra ID, now Entra ID. You have to define the variables, and as you can see, I didn't say network range in our main file. I didn't give those values because I have a default values. So if I don't declare any value in my file, I will be using the default values, the default password, default user, default template. I can change, for example, here I can say one host. If I declare a second host in the environment, will deploying two hosts. If I don't declare anything, I will be use the default values that the the module has defined. And also, from the point of view security, we have to assign roles to the system. Usually, we have the bad habit to assign roles to all the users and give them the user the highest roles, because you just need to work and don't want to make I don't know, the investigation maybe. So with this module, I get the list of user. This list of user, I looking for the user in my Entra ID. So then I create a security group. I create a security group and add those users to my security group. So at the level of the Azure Virtual Desktop, the end user only need two roles: desktop virtualization user and a virtual machine user login. So here I extract the data from that role that exists in Azure, and then I assign the user the role to, sorry, the user no, the security group that I create, I assign that security group that role. And then I do the same for the virtual machine user role. I assign that role to all virtual machine to the user. How that you can see that in the environment. For example, let's see the role of the computer. If the user enter, meanwhile, I'm going to open this. So if I see all the roles, I will see that the security group we already create, we just create have the role related to virtual machine user login. And that group exists in my enter ID. I can looking for the group. I can looking for the group and I will see the members of the group that I create automatically are the users that I define in my deployment. And I'm going to enter to the virtual machine that I just create, my Azure Virtual Desktop. As you can see, I enter with my URL, with a URL with my user. This is my user, and my user is allowed to connect to that environment. So I connect. I can use like a RDP connection. I will connect in the computer, and I can say if I allow print. I can block those configuration also. Uh, and as you can see, I enter in that computer with my user. It's the first time, will take a few minutes, but I can access to the resource almost immediately. And I have the different resource, the virtual network I just create, the the host pool, that is the host pool of the resource where I can see all the computers that I have in my environment, and if it's healthy, and also as you can see, there is a session in the system, and I can see in this portal which user have an active session. Right now is this user. My user is still loading the. And as you can see, it's a Windows 11 connection, and I can use any of the other two users to connect to the environment. So I'm going to, while I explain other additional information, I'm going to destroy the environment. I only need one command to destroy the environment. Terraform destroy. The system will read all the roles of the user and then will destroy the environment. While this is happening, let's explore for a second. So as you can see in the Terraform, we define a rule, and a specific rule to allow 443. So this configuration, this is the configuration that we configure or create through Terraform. Here is reading all the resource that I have created in the environment. right now is this reading is a comparison that the system is doing with the TF state file, with my TF state file. I cannot read it right now because it's using it's in use with Terraform. So I won't I don't want screw anything. Here is and you let's see the instruction. Here the system is telling me I'm going to destroy all these resources. Basically all the resources we just create will be destroyed. Are 20, are 20 resources. We said yes, and in that moment the system will be start destroying the the resource. Meanwhile, if you want to explore this module and even make recommendation, this is the GitHub environment that I have, my GitHub repository, where you can test it and make any feedback related to the creation of Terraform. Even there is a module in, I have a couple of modules. In this case, we are talking about Azure Virtual Desktop. I already have a module. This is the basic instruction that you require to create the resource. And while it's still destroying, let me show you a couple more things. So, a couple of final thoughts. There is a complete certification path in Microsoft. It's called AC1 140. Is related to Azure Virtual Desktop configuration and operation. Also, there is for Terraform there is a certification that you will become a Terraform associate engineer or something like that. Is a certification that I already have. You have to renew each 2 years, but those are the tools that I have to work with Terraform. And other final thoughts. Use the forum, use Stack Overflow, use um, Microsoft Q&A, ask question, ask meditated question to help the community to answer the question. One I am one of those who respond questions. So please feel free answer the question. Sorry, ask question and somebody will answer your doubts. It's still destroying. And also, you can, if you like to learn more about Azure, you want to get deep knowledge about cloud architect in Azure, please schedule a mentoring session with me. I will be uh, I will be enjoy. I will be happy to give a mentor session as with my English, my level of English. And also, you can find me in the social media as a Soy Solis Carlos or in LinkedIn. I am most active in LinkedIn with Soy Solis Carlos. And it is still destroying. Let's give them a couple of minutes. A couple of minutes. So the resources are destroyed. Let's looking for them. Let's looking for them. If we can see in our resources, if we refresh, we all the resources were deleted in the environment. Even if I go in the client, I don't have connection to the client. Thank you, and again, at your service, a pleasure. Bye.